Alrighty, welcome back. Whammon, you're looking a lot different, but you're looking very handsome, I have to say. Welcome, Myriad, joining us for the rest of it. How you doing?
Very good indeed, Ben. It's good to be here, and we'll be taking over from Whammon. Actually, no, you are completely right. I did turn into this from Whammon, which, you know, it's amazing what a few minutes can do to a person, and here we are at the end of the day. And what a sit we have on our hands after MSN takes down Kiliardi 3-1. And I don't think that's a result most people had on their cards given their history.
No, I think Kiljadi was certainly favored, but we've seen it time or a few times with MSN coming out and putting in really good performances. It's just been about stringing them together. And I think that's been sort of, his time is coming at some point, whether it's this tournament or a later one. He is very much that up and comer. And what better test for an up and comer to be up against one of the stalwarts, one of the best players that we have in the scene, one of the players who you would have expected to have already qualified for the main event if they were playing in previous weeks, Wam01.
And it's always a very interesting dynamic, I think, in this kind of a matchup between a very established, very capable player like Wham and someone like MSN who is very capable but more up and coming, less proven, where there's an assumption that Wham is going to win, naturally, right? That's just, if you're a betting man, that's what you would expect. But that's also pressure, isn't it? There's a pressure that there's an expectation for you to win, and that's a big aspect. Whereas for MSN, that is less of an issue.
No, for MSN, really a case as we jump into the game. MSN, really a case that he's got nothing to lose. It's really him taking a punt. It's all the pressure is on Wham. Now, when I was 17, I was struggling to hit play on the ranked ladder, let alone queue up against one of the best players in the world for a chance to compete at a LAN for a lot of money in person. We see the milkshake picture coming in for the the young MSN on the right as we have both of our scouts running around getting sheep. On the right, we've got MSN in the blue on China, and on the left, Wham in the purple with the Byzantines.
This early game should be somewhat uneventful so far from what we've seen before from this matchup. Byzantines likely to go very heavily onto stone. We've seen 2, but very often 3 as well up against China, because there's very little danger early on to you as Byzantines here. That is normally the main stopper to any kind of excessive greed when it comes to systems and late age up against civilizations like the French or others that can output aggression early on. China, however, although they do age up faster than any other civ in the game by a big margin, usually very soon after 3 minutes, depending on the build order, for the next 2 minutes even afterwards, they're doing nothing but making IOs and consolidating their economy, likely into a pro-scout timing. Wham, however, opting for the 2 stone opener so far, so this is a nice middle ground. It's either 1, 2, or 3 if you plan to go for the winery. 1 is the safest, 2 is an in-between, and 3 is sort of the greediest you can go for. So Wham doing a nice little in-between. This will give him a good balance and will allow him to get his 3rd cistern up just before that winery finishes, and will then propel him into a nice little economic boost early on.
It'll be interesting to see from Wham whether he does look to generally play a bit greedier, not necessarily disrespectful, but understanding that he is in an advantageous position, being or would feel like he is the better player in this matchup. But he must also be expecting from MSN. I don't know if he watched the earlier games, but MSN's Chinese play to look to take it to him. 1 is he is the Byzantines, of course, and 2, MSN playing on the Chinese. In this case, we've got the Imperial Academy coming up with 2, all very straightforward build orders. And yeah, like you say, would be very surprised if we didn't see him go into Pro Scouts early. And from Wham, I mean, I don't really see anything that's too different or out of the norm. Now we've got the Grand Winery coming up. The berry's actually in a pretty decent location tucked in the back, and likewise the gold. So I think, I mean, you can't ask for too much better on a Dry Arabia spawn than what Wham's got for himself here.
You really can't, in reality. Wham here must be very, very happy with the layout. I mean, as you mentioned, the blackberries there just in the north is fantastic for him. But even more importantly, the initial back gold, the side berries there with the wood lines on the flank, and then even the southern berries all the way this forward, there's a very easy wall he can throw up there. And of course, to complement further, the deer as well as the second gold at the back. This really is pretty much a dream for
It's everything, yeah.
So it's very, very good for him indeed. MSN, however, we mentioned a bit about the build order. It's just a little bit different here, aging up with a 2. Normally we see that 4 to 5 on the age up. So MSN must be cooking something a little bit different here. Very heavy food commitment as opposed to wood as well. So looking to really maximize those officials nice and early. The main question we have here for MSN is it just going to be Pro Scout straight away? Or are we going to output some aggression before that and rely on taxes to get us the gold necessary for it? Considering there's still 2 on gold, it does seem to be the case that we're going straight for that Pro Scouts.
Yeah, just looking to see as we follow MSN Scout, he just got in to see where the berry and gold locations are. So that is the potential locations for any pressure, any horsemen to go and put some pressure on. That might be the case that he saw that as we'll go for the Pro Scouts right away, or maybe he was preferring that regardless. But we do see, yeah, the 2 vills stay on gold, meaning, okay, we're not just relying on taxes, or at least not just yet, as that tax gold is plenty for basically anything else other than aging up to castle or getting that Pro Scouts early. But we do see a stable coming down from Wam.
Very nice choice here from Wam. Something I like doing myself here as the Byzantines. Gives you plenty of space outputting that cavalry nice and early. Normally the delay on Chinese, especially if they go for that Pro Scouts early, means that they're prioritizing scouts over military in these opening stages. So creating some distance between the opponent's base and your own here as Byzantines buys you some much needed and very valuable time indeed. The horsemen will allow Wam to put some pressure on that deer gathering as well from MSN, and might even potentially, in a dream case, force out some spears from MSN, and that's exactly what Wam would love to see. Because there's no heavy plan here to commit a lot into these horsemen, I assume. I wouldn't be surprised to see him stop before a total of 5, most likely. And he will then opt to go, of course, into the mercenaries and potentially switch into a Limitane as well afterwards. Now we see a secondary production building that could possibly be the mercenary camp, most likely. Yep, and there it is. And we're very much expecting longbows here. I know we saw some pretty crazy play by Kilerdi in the last series, going for those knives, which is high risk, high reward, right? Without a doubt. Didn't quite work out for him in that series, but longbows, I mean, is the old reliable, and it's something that China struggles with dealing so much.
Yeah, we even saw javelins today as well in an earlier game, so it's been a nice little variety. Maybe it is time that we get to see the longbows for today. But Wam coming across, and he does find the Pro Scouts straight away, goes exactly to the right place, and is microing these horsemen to force the first one to drop. And he has got the horseman numbers out. There's 2 here, there's 2 more on the way, and behind this, although defender's advantage means MSNs do come first, Wam actually does have more, and it's only a couple of archers from MSN that will come to supplement this, but that's not going to be particularly helpful in defending against or protecting his Pro Scouts, as I think actually Wam might pick off. Oh, the first horseman does go down, and one of the scouts coming a bit loose too, but it looks like it will maybe get away to safety depending on the micro. But yes, Wam doing a great job already to come across and not give up the Pro Scouts too easily to MSN.
This is a pretty unfortunate start for MSN indeed in this game, as you mentioned, especially with the archer switch so early. This is, I want to say, a bit of a classic blunder that happens at every level really, but it's this dichotomy of assumption versus scouting when it comes to information. You assume there's going to be Limitane quite early on from the Byzantines, as they're often put on the defensive, so naturally you go into archers, but you don't have confirmation that that is actually the case. So the result here is that these archers are just absolutely useless at this stage, and there's a massive tempo loss here for MSN that honestly at this level might be game deciding at this stage, though early it is to call indeed. But you can see the struggle here for MSN. He's just trying at this point to match the horseman numbers as China against Byzantines. That is not normally a struggle. He's going to be able to push away the horsemen at this stage. Wam did invest a lot into them. We know for sure that Wam has seen the previous series. We did see him in chat, so he might expect MSN to heavily commit to that feudal age as he has up against Kiliardi earlier. So as a result, way more horsemen are being produced than is standard for Byzantines in this case. Wam wants to put on the pressure.
Yeah, Wham putting on the pressure and also playing very safe behind that, getting his walls up early, getting his economy nice and protected. And this is something that we haven't seen out of every Byzantine game recently, is the being able to be obviously on the defensive, the back foot, and then being able to secure up your base. So Wham is deciding, actually, no, I can take the game to you with these horsemen and then allow myself to get that behind it. And I think particularly of interest is both of these dare packs of MSN are in this bottom side of the corner. So there's no guessing or splitting of army that Wham needs to do. He just has to come down here, and that's all the pressure he needs to put on. And as a result now, MSN has been full producing into as many horsemen as he can, which is of substantially the same number as Wham, but then he's got a bunch of archers behind it, which cost a lot, aren't that super useful in this situation. But Wham's now got 2 lots of longbows coming out, which if he does use to join the army, which he could choose to do, or maybe just keep them at home for safety, any straight up fight would be in his favor as well. So it really is, the ball's sort of in Wham's court for now, but maybe MSN realizes that and it's like, well, I'm going to come across the map to you then.
And we see just the amount of space that Wam has bought himself with this horseman play and the early shift in tempo. Already, the wall is up on the south side, the berries are secured, and in the north as well, they are secured. And behind this, Wam feels the confidence surge from the lead that he has obtained, and the macro is already there. Halfway to the resources needed for that castle age. This is exactly when Byzantines is often at their most vulnerable. But with the advantage that he has gained, he's also in a pretty decent spot. MSN, however, has a very clear game plan on hand, which is the one he executed beforehand, and it is just non-stop, relentless unit production, and you can see that manifesting already. As the deer gets under that mill and the supervision affords additional resources, it means that doubling up the horseman count now MSN has, and he's putting on the pressure. The berries are now idled. House is going to get dropped here, not only for vision, but of course to avoid that population capping early. But the danger with this, especially with the presence of wall, is that you might be cut off here, so MSN has to be extremely careful.
Really careful, and this is sort of the opportunity for MSN if he can get the timing as Wham looks to age up. But yeah, he's got his forces split, but actually doing a great job with the reinforcement horsemen to come in and get onto the longbows, getting a lot of kills. There were 3 groups, but there's now down to 10, which is just the 2 groups, and does jump onto the horsemen and the longbows, and the villagers here getting some idle time as well. This is probably the best he could have asked for, MSN coming in here. Now the archers join the army as well. Huge horseman count. There's 30 archers on the field for MSN. He really is putting the pedal to the metal, and those archers, they are getting destroyed by the TC there, but it's not a fully garrisoned TC, and those archers are still able to get a lot of damage on the longbows. So the longbow count is now 1-0. Wham has 4 horsemen total against 28 on the field for MSN. That Golden Horn Tower is coming up with 0 fills building it. There's 7 coming across now, which are no chance going to be able to get that. And with one fell swoop, MSN was able to jump onto the longbows and turn in what was looking at a terrible situation for him, turn into a quick, swift win in game 1 and huge upset.
This is the type of greed they warned about in the Bible right here, Ben. Wham foregoing the Limitane entirely, underestimating the level of commitment into horsemen here from MSN. And MSN, I mean, if there's anything he is known for, it is that heavy horseman commitment, and few civs are better at doing it in the feudal age, fueled by that sweet deer, than China and MSN putting on a clinic here, knowing exactly how to punish such greed from the Byzantines here. And it pays fruit indeed as he takes a decisive game number 1 here. And this is a big win, taking down Byzantines in what I think most people would say is slightly favored towards the Byzantines.
Up until about 2 minutes ago, I think we all agreed with that. For MSN to just find the right engagement and really committed fully to those horsemen. I mean, the commitment, I gotta respect it, to be honest. We sort of talked about, we thought that's what Emerson's game plan would be, and it wasn't looking like it maybe was going to work out. And there's 3 groups of longbows there ready to sort of tee off, even teeing off onto horsemen they will go down with that strength of longbows. But the first group just destroyed it and then was jumped on to the rest of them so quickly. MSN, I mean, he's got to feel great. He's broken any potential duck here. He's already got a game up against Wam, which probably would have been a huge win coming into it just to get that win. He's done it decisively in a way that left nothing to doubt. And now he's one game up going into the rest of this series, which puts him in a fantastic position. Shake off the nerves, get into it. It's looking good for MSN. He's got to feel great after that first game.
MSN, who is now leading the series 1-0 up against Wam, will find himself spawning in the north side of Four Lakes, once again in the color blue, playing as the Ayubids, facing Wam01 in the color purple as the Knights Templar. Looking at this opening here, heavy on wood from both players, as expected. The question here for Wam is, are we just going to go straight for that dock play, which does seem to be the case with the positioning of this villager. With the dock, of course, for KT, 250 woods, and it is not a regular dock, it is in fact a harbor, way more HP, but also way bigger price tag for that dock, which in this case doesn't really work out in their favor. We can see MSN has finished his dock before Wam even started his, so the fishing is going to be online way earlier for him. And there's a question there of whether we might potentially see some Dark Age play here from Wam, but I think it's a prudent choice not to go for it. I mean, quite often, torching a dock in the Dark Age here in some matchups is a very good choice to go for, but Ayubids with the cheaper docks and the ability to go for a very fast age up if need be with that advancement wing means that they don't really feel the sting of those spears.
It is really the downside to the KT of new compared to the old. You just don't have that wood if you are going to go for the dock to be able to play both the barracks and the, well, I shouldn't even say dock, harbor, I believe, in the Dark Age if you want to make any fishing ships yourself. So yeah, maybe not the most, well, as strong as KT once was, but we have seen him have a lot of success on these hybrid maps as well. But perhaps Four Lakes, maybe the harbor difference is not quite what you would like compared to maybe a Holy Island. It might be a little bit better. But in this case, we do have Wam going across with the villager, looking to put down one of those harbors on MSN's side of the map.
Yeah, and MSN hasn't gone on to gold just yet. The main question here for Four Lakes is, how likely is it that we're going to see some counter-docking action? That is what often breaks the camel's back here. No pun intended, to be honest, in that one. Because the reality is, when the fishing is interrupted on one side, even just by the mere presence of a dock, that is enough to strike fear into the opponents. You never know what exactly can come out of that dock, and often just placing the dock is enough to force a way bigger reaction in terms of resources than the investment of the dock itself, especially as Ayubids. I mean, you can drop a dock for 75 wood and suddenly the opponent feels the need to make a springboard ship and an archer ship, maybe even a demo, and that's over 500 in res right there compared to your 75. It's a massive way to eke out a lead early. Wam, however, going for a very brave play here with a late barracks on the proxy here forward, looking to harass Wam's gold gathering early on and potentially even target that dock. Now, this is a very big delay for him, as you can see, because, of course, there was the initial delay of the harbor, the fishing ships, thenceforth, and now we have the barracks. Now, the wood economy is helpful in this case. 20% of wood is also given as food for the Knights Templar, so not going to be as bad as it normally is for other civs, but the startup time is later than usual.
Absolutely. And then to come across, I mean, I was surprised. I couldn't believe he was going to put down a second harbor and turned out to be entirely wrong. It was the proxy barracks coming across, forcing MSN off of gold, first of all, and then turning himself to those docks, of which he'll now know there are two of them. Going up MSN with the culture wing, like you alluded to earlier, getting up with advancement, so that nice, cheaper age up to get himself to feudal age soon. And he's obviously well aware now, MSN, that these spearmen are on the field, and this earlier age up will at least give him a chance to get into feudal, perhaps some archers perhaps some extra docks of his own. But for now, it's Wam taking the game to MSN here on these docks, which are actually burning down pretty quickly.
Yes, the spares, one by one, more are added, and further torches are being thrown. The advancement will come in, but honestly, I don't believe the timing will be quick enough here for MSN to get out a galley to defend this dock as well, as long as spearman production continues. There is a second dock, however, in the north there, so I take that back. He's definitely going to be able to get one out if he so chooses here. But the advancement choice, I mean, it's quite a big thing to force out here for Wam, because outside of the fact that the age up is faster, there is nothing to be gained from this for MSN. Just the sheer speed of the age up, which it doesn't even feel that fast, honestly, nowadays. It did get nerfed long, long ago, but not nearly as fast as you would expect. It does come through. It's going to be Hospitale on the way for Wam instead. So nice little boost in economy there, as well as villager protection with the extra health and the move speed and access to the Hospitale Knight, which we don't see enough of, honestly.
No, we've seen some interesting strategies with those Hospitales and the massing them and the healing in the feudal age, which could be quite exciting, as we've seen them get just small buffs, but buffs nonetheless. Saw Wam turn to that second dock there on that far left pond, but I think that galley has come out in time, or that dhow, I should say, which turned those spearmen away. But MSN, is he going? Oh, it's up. It's up, and that's terrible for MSN. That going up just gives them the chance to make a harbor, I should say. Extra health is going to be so hard to take down, and is going to be constantly knocking on MSN's door, which means that it's going to require a lot more investment for MSN to fully secure up that pond. Whereas if that didn't go up, he was free to fish to his heart's content.
I think this harbor drop is a very intelligent play here by Wam. Generally speaking, it's just good to counter dock anyway on 4 lakes, but Knights Templar, it's such a strong play for them here, despite the extra cost, because if you drop a harbor on one of these spawns as Knights Templar, you better commit and fight on that water, because it's easy to forget, but the additional health around that dock for the Knights Templar ships is such a strong bonus for them, and makes it very difficult, almost impossible, as long as the micro is good from either side, for the opponent to actually beat Knights Templar there on the water. Now, the fishing ships for MSN will aid in those fights, as well as the fact that he was able to get the ships out earlier, of course. But with the spearman present means that there's not going to be a second dock here for MSN. So 1 dock against 1 dock. This should definitely potentially favor Wam here. As I mentioned, the fishing ships will help MSN, and the harbor is somewhat far away for that extra health to come into effect. But now the attention is forced to be split as well. Do you hit the ship, or do you hit the spearman torching the dock? Neither choice feels great in this situation. MSN, though, fully invested into units on land as well, and a ram coming up as well, which is a big investment.
It's a huge investment, and all the difference, that split second between that villager getting up that harbor or not, has meant all of this extra investment from MSN. There's the multiple military ships in the water, and she's been trying to get this ram up for a while. First of all, trying to target this barracks, although the spearman and Hospitalis push it away. We see a little bit of a skirmish on the side there with, I think, a demo ship from Wam coming in and going down. The healing is still enough on the backline to keep it up, and Wam goes home and retreats to that all-powerful harbor. And then on the front side, Emerson has got his archer count up to help deal with these spears, but it's tough against the Hospitaler and now Horsemen being added in from Wam. It's on all fronts for Wam against MSN, and very much unlike last game where it was MSN looking to take it to Wam. It's Wam who's come across the map to take the game to MSN in this one.
And the difficulty in this position, when there's both water fights as well as land fights, is the burden of control, the burden of micro and APM. It's as much of a resource as any other. You have to be very careful how you choose to spend it and where. And in this case, with the reality that archers are being made as well as horsemen from MSN, compared to Wam's much easier to control composition with just 4 melee units, meant that those initial trades went in the favor of Wam. He does get pushed away at this point, so MSN regaining some much needed control, but his fishing is still under constant threat here. he's forced to split his attention on land as well as on water at the same time at this stage. The barracks will go down, so that's a nice prize for the scuffles so far in this game. And looks like he's still continuing to produce archers. Might have slowed down for a bit there, but no longer. Wam, however, is still full producing on the water as well. Second springboard ship coming out. Good job in keeping the ships that he has so far alive.
Yeah, I think we saw a demo earlier come through, but other than that, Wam has done a great job to keep everything alive. We also see a bit of a difference with the effect that even that single pilgrim makes for Wam, with that gold trickle and just being the difference for him to be able to get his upgrades or get an extra ship out while not needing to mine it, being primarily on that wood, even now switching into adding in a couple of archers alongside those horsemen and spearmen, just makes it feel a lot nicer for that Knights Templar economy and lean into the bonuses. As we talk about split attention, that demo ship comes in, doesn't even just go for the backlog, but cleans up some of the fishing ships as well, and that's huge damage from Wam on MSN's pond there. And with those extra military ships there as well, it does look like Wam has cleaned up, or at least taken control of that pond for the time being, which is not what MSN wants to see with his fishing.
Yeah, that's a massive value detonation there on the demo, not only clearing up the springboard ship, but damaging the fishing ships as well. And now they're going to be cleaned up. Demo comes out and manages to get a good connection, takes out the low health galley as well as the springboard ship, but at the same time, Wam using this momentum to attack on land as well. And there's very few spearmen here for MSN, so a lot of these archers are going to go down. Villages are starting to fall as well. One did get picked off, and there's just so many horsemen here. There's not enough spears for MSN. He's continuing to produce horsemen, but no further spears in production. The food is a big struggle at this point for MSN. Losing the fishing is massive, and now he's forced to expand onto the northern pond as well. But Wam has now access to 3 ponds that he can maximize fishing on, and they are tied in economic count, which is normally a big advantage for Knights Templar as they start from behind initially due to that age up, as well as what is now a double investment into those pilgrims.
Yeah, 9 eco kills for Wam. It feels good on the money front. Like you said, getting the second pilgrim in somehow between all of that, and then also timing it, that dive with the horseman just as +1 range defense came out, meant all those archers standing ground there on the gold did absolutely nothing but tickle them. And Wam, I think, MSN, I think only had 2, maybe 3 spearmen, and only maybe 1 joined the fight. So not quite being able to react to that. As a result, Wam just getting his little picks across the board on land and winning the wars in the sea. And at this point, the fishing eco is taking off. The gold eco is really high, with all these pilgrims going untouched to any sacred site he wishes, and a big army behind it as well. It's kind of all going in Wam's favor right now.
Absolutely, and it will just keep getting worse for MSN in this game, because it's going to be a while before all of the fish is saturated in those ponds. MSN can produce so many fishing ships, Wam, can produce so many fishing ships to exhaust these deep sea fish. But he has to be careful to strike a balance between producing those fishing ships and producing units on land as well. It can be easy to get too greedy here and produce too much, and suddenly your land army is not up to par. But that isn't going to be the case, because Wam is producing from multiple production buildings for the full tri-composition, spears, archers, as well as horsemen, compared to MSN only producing archers and horsemen. And he's gonna look to make a push across the map, assuming that Wam is likely going for a caster transition behind this. But I feel like he's walking into the belly of the beast potentially, because Wam might look for an encirclement. We see what looks to be units in the north. He's going to look to gut reinforcements, but no, they turn around. He's going to find a few archers on the way, which might get ignored in order to get what is likely to be a full surround, but he doesn't move forward with his army from home just yet.
Wam controlling different little groups of horsemen all over the map while playing on a hybrid map is definitely taking things to another level. We do see MSN pick up a couple of those horsemen. That's a nice little surround there. One does get away, but it is very much on low health. But the army from Wam is still really high, definitely taking no chances after that last game of trying to sneak in either more fishing or look to get an age up, as now his gold is at least getting to that position if the rest of his eco is not quite there. We might see a little bit of a dive from MSN, knowing he's got to make something happen. Moves the horsemen up to stay away from those spearmen, but that's a lot of spearmen and maybe not enough archers to deal with it. This tri-comp of Wam is just pushing across the map. He can retreat to his tower, which will give him some sanctuary, but this is looking really tough. This is a huge military count against MSN, while Wam has a superior economy. Now he's looking to take the fight under the guise of his tower, under the protection of it, I should say. The archer's just going for a little bit of a walk, but Wam still has plenty here to be able to kill whatever he wants. Picking off archers one by one. The horsemen slowly falling to the spears and the horsemen. It's a huge military count deficit. This is Wam doing to MSN what MSN did to him last game.
Precisely. It's a disastrous result here for MSN in this game. He gets the bad news in the worst way possible, getting caught mid-map with his mass, unable to contest the army count from Wam, who had the full rounded composition going, plenty of units of all types. And with this newfound space and the good fight that he had won, Wam has a very easy route to that castle age. And with the Angevin Empire coming in here, the heavy spears will be coming out to finish the deal. MSN at this point likely just processing what is happening in this game and most likely thinking of exactly what to go for next, because this game is finished.
Yeah, a really strong response from Wam. I mean, last game definitely sort of got caught off guard there with his army and fell very quickly to MSN's. In this case, coming out methodically, strong, aggressive to take on MSN and take the game to him on a map where you really do have to play all sides and play really, really well, execute well to be able to get any sort of luck. And it's even harder against this kind of caliber of player as Wam. And GG is called. Wam goes to show, okay, this isn't going to be that easy for you, MSN. I have woken up and I'm ready to get into the series for real this time. It all starts square from here at 1-1.
Tied up these two now are Wam, with a much needed win after his unfortunate first defeat there. Must be feeling a bit more comfortable now. It never feels good to lose that opening game, especially in a somewhat neutral, strong matchup like that. So much needed win here put on the board, and tied they now are. So I'm quite curious to see what MSN chooses as his next place to fight.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure what the bans of the maps were. I'd be surprised to see too much water here. Obviously, that was our Four Lakes game, and we see, yeah, Holy Island was vetoed, and we go to, don't worry, guys, it looks like there's a little bit of water on the icon there, but this is Coastal Cliffs. That's all cut off. There's no water whatsoever. It's just a more condensed land map, which, if anything, makes sense why MSN would want to go here. I don't want to play that crap anymore. I want to fight you straight up. It worked for me the first time. Let's see if it can happen again. Though it's quite an interesting Civ matchup here. Juicy's Legacy versus Malian, and Abbasid sniped out again.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting choice here, these civs from MSN. We're likely looking at a situation of MSN. He has access to the Japanese, right? I think this is a case of realizing that if he picks Japanese here and something like Jushi or Abbasid alongside it, he's not going to get to play Japanese most likely. So he's going to then be forced to play either Jushi or Abbasid. But if he picks two of the lesser civs here, then that still leaves Japanese open for the next one. So MSN, this is a good sign for him because it shows a confidence in being willing to potentially take a defeat here and placing himself on match point against a powerhouse civilization like the Malians in exchange for putting his draft in a better position as a result of it. So it shows good confidence here from MSN, but obviously it's a very risky strategy, especially in such a short series like a best of 5, because, well, after this, if you lose this game, you're not allowed any further mistakes, because then that is the series finished. So obviously Golden Horde cannot be picked here effectively because of the lack of stone initially at your base. So he was kind of, in a way, almost forced into this decision because of the map that he chose. but it was his choice at the end of the day. Whereas Wam, sticking with his previous strategy of forcing two really strong picks here, and his draft is perfect for that as well. The Marlins as well as the Macedonians. It's a pick your poison situation.
And we get the chance to find out. In this case, we've got MSN spawning in the blue in the bottom left, and Wam spawning in the purple in the top right. Do apologize a little bit that we have the blue and purple. I did see some people saying that it's not super great with some forms of color blindness, so sorry about that, or sorry on behalf of the players about that. Hopefully you can bear with us here, and hopefully Myriad and I can explain things well enough that hopefully it's not too much of a disadvantage. MSN, I do smile every time that picture comes up. It gets me. It's not even just a milkshake too. I think it's just the cheeky little smile he's got there. But yeah,
it's like he knows.
He knows exactly what he did. But we see the scouts out here, pretty straightforward, not getting in each other's way and picking up a decent amount of sheep here. But that's hardly the exciting part really at this stage, as we have both Jushi and Mali pretty happy to do their own things to get started in the game.
Coastal Cliffs, of course, is essentially a condensed dry Arabia. Well, 2/3 of dry Arabia, you could even call it, which often weakens the effectiveness of cavalry in the later stages of the game, which is, well, pretty rare nowadays in today's Age of Empires 4. Cavalry is generally king on most maps and in most matchups, but this is one of those maps where once you do get to that mid-game and wars and defenses start being consolidated to a great extent, where there's just simply less room to move. So in those cases, the mobility loses some value, and that might play into an effect this game, as both civs do very often rely on heavy cavalry play.
Absolutely. And just having a look at this map, am I right that Wam's second gold is that far away from his TC up the front? Is that his second gold? That might be a little bit rough of a position for poor Wam to deal with. And on the other side, I guess, for MSN, we're looking at where he's going to put down that meditation gardens, and it's decent. You can't complain too much about that. Definitely touching that gold, so he's going to get his wood and berries as well. No stone, which is always a nice to have, a little bit of quality of life, but with his spawn, I'm sure he won't complain. And if he notices or finds out about Wam's gold spawns, I'm sure he certainly won't be complaining.
Yeah, it's a very nice Met Garden. Just a little bit unlucky there for MSN as a scout came around the south side, just then spotting the exact same yield, but with 2 additional berries there on the right side, and potentially more wood as well for him. But yeah, he already had moved his villages in position, so you don't want to then cancel and move the landmark. It's not really worth it compared to the tempo that you do lose. And as it's being highlighted for us, it's very likely going to be Pro Scouts yet again here from MSN as the Jushi. With the 4 on gold, that pretty much confirms it. And Wam, on the other hand, there's a few different openings here in the feudal age that Marlins have access to. Some players like to spend their initial gold on those cows and fill up a ranch nice and quick, as others look to prioritize the economic upgrades instead, something like a wheelbarrow whilst raging up. And I do in fact know that the Canadian brothers do prefer to go for the economic route, so no surprises, wheelbarrow getting queued immediately as soon as he had the wood after finishing the mill.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing too unexpected from either player. MSN loves his professional scouts, and it's hard to argue against it in this game and matchup. He's got both of his dare packs sitting nicely packed away on the far right, which is really close, actually, both of those. On the other side, Wam probably not going to bother with either of them, but both being in front of his base or in front and to the side, maybe MSN could look to pick up a few more for himself as well. Poor Wam's villager coming out now, and she's very vulnerable sitting out there trying to build a pit mine on that poor gold. And I guess the first thing we'll see is if MSN, like he's done previously, is going to open up with a horseman initially, or whether he wants to go straight in to bringing home those deer.
We mentioned about the deer packs there for Wam is very significant indeed. The double forward deer pack there, well, one is kind of off to the far right flank there, but still pretty exposed. And because it's so far away from Wam's base, it could very well be on MSN's cards there to start picking up some of those carcasses. And that is when Pro Scouts really starts being very worth it indeed, when you are able to take away some of your opponent's dare. Although most of the food is lost by the time they reach their base, it's a double whammy, right? Not only do you secure additional food for yourself, but you take some away from your opponent, which some people might think that's not very significant for Malians because they do have the cows, but if you go for a very long feudal age, you will need a lot of food, way more than just those feudal age cow ranchers can give you.
Yeah, and especially with that gold exposed in the front, if the economies, if it does extend into the feudal age and those economies start running dry, that can be all the tipping point one of these players needs to start running over each other. And if MSN can get that feudal lead, as he did at least in the first game. Oh, taking out the scout is quite nice there from MSN. A little bit of an oversight there, maybe some pathing from Wam going awry. As we see, a tower coming up there to stop at least the stuff in the middle, and perhaps that is from Wam a little bit of a recognizing that first of all his deer in the front there, and also of course his gold is exposed. So if if MSN can get that feudal lead, it could be a lot that he can go and pressure or destroy. But we see Wam, and I'm sure. We see Wam already making units, and I'm sure he's not going to take anything lightly here, as I'm sure he still remembers what game one was like.
And Wam, interestingly enough, going for a quite old school play here with the Malians, playing the extra safe composition, which, especially given his spawn, I can't blame him at all. Going for the classic javelins alongside those Donzo. One of the best defensive comps in the game and one of the strongest feudal age comps. Even to this day, when Cav is so dominant, Jav Donzo does very well, even now. And yeah, Wam recognizing the importance of this position and preparing adequately. The Mansa Quarry has been switched over onto stone, arrow slits coming up, and he kept it on it, so looking to get fortification after this as well. And it's a very big, juicy spot indeed to secure here. With the deer as well as the forward goal, that's going to be a pivotal position in this game. And MSN doing the classic here, what we kind of expected from him in this game, which is going to be non-stop unit production. The Spearman, once again, we see a similar case in game one where there's just an assumption here from Wam, from MSN, that there will be Sofa, which is very common for Malians to do, but it's just not the case for Wam, right? The scouting just wasn't there. So as a result, we just have some units that are kind of useless, really. I mean, they're not terrible as a frontline up against the Javs, but they're still kind of just dead weight, and every little bit of food here is very significant for him. So he has to be careful about investing more into them.
Yeah, I just saw actually, as you were saying it, he queued one up and then cancelled it in favor of queuing up a horseman instead. We also saw him get one palace guard, so I thought maybe he was switching into that instead. But I think the biggest thing, or the biggest tell for MSN, is that just still waiting for a lot of that food eco to take off to be able to produce as many units as he wants. Trying to produce palace guard, horsemen, and Juganu is a huge food investment, even for the economy of the likes of a pro scouting, Shushi's legacy. And it is, I mean, I quite like seeing the Donzo Javelin comp again. It's something that I always found so scary playing myself. If I saw it come out, I was like, ah, man, am I just gonna try to dive this later and then die with what seems like superior units? Wam in this case doing a great job picking that defensive infantry comp, but still getting out on the map, scouting, seeing that MSN was going for those cornered deer of his, and pulling his at least a handful of units to try to stop that with those spear throwing Donzos. They do a great job of picking off scouts very easily, whether they're carrying those deer or not. So very, very nice from him. But we do see it again, like we did in the first game, and like you alluded to before we jumped in here. MSN looking to pile on in the feudal age is non-stop units from him still.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, the Jav Donzo here I think is such a great choice indeed, because especially against the Zuganu, these units, although they pack an immense punch with huge DPS, as long as they can shoot, they are incredibly slow and have very low range. The Javs can kite them endlessly if they so choose. And I mean, there's few better answers against Zuganu than Javs. Maybe longbows potentially, but I'd say Javs are even better here. Not only the ranged armor, but the speed, the range is just massive. And Wam looking to round out his composition with just a stable now and one sofa. Might look to produce more, but as it's being highlighted to us, looks like there might potentially be a consideration for Castle Age, but yeah, upon scouting it, with that scout there up at the front, he sees just the sheer blob here from MSN, Wham immediately clears up more units.
More units and the ranged upgrade, or the ranged defense upgrade now coming in. And I'm sure other upgrades to follow. The sofa now, it wasn't just a single one coming out. There are more in the queue. And now, yeah, Wham really maybe saw this a little bit late coming out, but not able to get that second tower up. But he's certainly respecting it, keeping his own production going. You can see the difference that fortification makes with the torches really not doing that much damage against the tower at all. And so MSN decides, well, I've got the units, I'm going to dive, let's take the fight. We'll see now if those javelins teeing off against the Shuganu are going to be enough, or whether they can turn the tide. Of course, shooting 3 times, it means they do a lot more damage, or at least they do at least 3 damage, if not 6, to each of these javelins, which makes all the difference. The range armor is only just now coming into complete, so it's a great timing and understanding from MSN to get a lot of damage here. Now we see the military count kind of wild in MSN's favor. It's just whether he can turn this into getting any damage outside of just the military, and if there's any economic damage he can get done. A little bit scary with his army being that deep in Wham's base.
Yeah, well, I might have greeded just a little bit too much with the cows, already up to 14, but as you mentioned, his military numbers aren't quite up to scratch just yet. Now, the space afforded to him by MSN going maybe a little bit too deep into the base means that he's able to get a second outpost up on this forward position, and that's going to make it even harder for MSN now to look for an engagement, even preparing rams at this stage. He has his necessary blacksmith upgrades, the steel arrow as well as the undermesh, so those are of course essential for this kind of a play, but Wham is about to match that. Still, his own steel arrow is almost halfway complete, and once that's finished, it's going to be way harder for MSN to take effective fights here. And Wham even going for the Musafadi warriors here, which is a very interesting choice, I gotta say. It makes sense against the Palace Guard, but we already have Sofa, which do an even better job at this stage, I will say, because of the bonus damage up against infantry units, as well as being great against the Zuganu as well at the same time. But MSN is just fully committed here. You can see only now getting his double broad axe. Would have been nice to see that a bit earlier, but I think the timing here is what he really wants to prioritize as he looks to engage directly. And you can see the cows as well as the food slowly running out from MSN here. It means that Wham's numbers are starting to match, and as the engagement comes in, it's such a horrible place here for MSN to fight. His front line is just getting absolutely massacred. There's already very little left here on the front for MSN. More and more units are coming across, but it's a long way to cross, and most of MSN's units here are very slow. The Zuganu mass is the main component of MSN's composition here, and they are such a slow unit, and MSN keeping most of his units in reserve here. I'm not sure if he just forgot about them or if he's looking to maybe bait Wham in on his side. Now he notices and regroups them.
Certainly not a conscious choice, I'm sure, from MSN. We saw even as the fight ended, MSN had a higher military count despite losing everything he had in that fight. And that's simply because of how many reinforcements he had back home. Maybe looking to just commit with the Rams to try to get the tower down, thinking he wasn't going to keep them alive. I'm not sure, but that didn't work out either. Not only did he not have all of his army there, but the pathing worked out terribly in his favor. Or not in his favor, I should say, as the Rams, one body blocked all the rest of the melee. The other Ram couldn't get involved. And now we see what is the worst feeling when playing a Jussi or a China is you're pumping all of this feudal aggression, and then all of a sudden, you run out of food.
And this is the worst possible timing here for MSN. Right as he looks to make his second push, he has to reconsolidate his food. 0 on food at this very moment for MSN. As he goes onto the berries, he would love to take that boar as well, but it's so far out. And Wham, now ahead in military value, although the count is still in MSN's favor because of his cheaper units. The Sofa and the Javs alone can deal with virtually all of MSN's composition here, as long as Wham just keeps pumping units. I mean, Wham just has to not greed here as he did in game one, and it's just going to be very difficult for MSN to find any sort of respite in this game or meaningful damage. And again, this is exactly what you want to do. As Marlian say, as the Rams are being constructed, you can easily take pot shots with the superior range of those jabs and just keep shooting, keep kiting. It makes it so painful for MSN here to try to half commit to the fight, half keep building the Rams, knowing he's on a timer. It really is disastrous.
It doesn't feel good, and especially when there's 3 Rams being built in front of you, it kind of tells you that that's a lot of resources that have been put into that, which haven't been put into units. And now MSN sending all of the horsemen in. I'm not sure if this is on purpose. The rest of the army not coming into fight either. Pulls the horsemen out, losing a couple of them, or 4 or 5 of them, and now turning around to fight with the rest of the army. The spearmen are getting some hits off onto the sofa, and Wam does pull back his force, but only to consolidate underneath his 2 upgraded towers, and now looks to turn the fight again to come onto MSN. Those 3 Rams are slowly coming up, but not really going to be too helpful here. We finally see the military value drop below for MSN, and this fight is now starting to look terrible for him as the reinforcements that come in are few and far between. The javelins are still teeing off, killing off almost all of the Jugunu, which are here at the front. It's only a couple of spears left, which means that these Sofa are going to be given free reign. There's still a handful of Donzos there as well, which are going to be used to clean up these Rams. They'll get a couple of houses maybe, but that's going to be about it. And with this, we've got Wam with all of the macro needed to go up to castle, and an MSN that was fully committed to feudal, which doesn't have anything else going for him.
You can see a complete switcheroo in terms of food income. MSN, who was so ahead earlier on, upwards of 1,000 when he had those supervised deer underneath the mill, is now struggling to even break 700 here. Meanwhile, Wam, 1,600 already, and the Fulani isn't even online yet. It can't really get worse for MSN in this position. I wouldn't be surprised to see him tap out the moment the age up comes through. It's just not mathematically feasible, really, to even think of mounting a comeback here. It's just such a massive deficit he finds himself under after that early game. Just those reinforcements that could have potentially cost him the game right there, forgetting what is essentially most of his army back at home. And you know, rallying your units back at home is normally a good choice in a lot of cases. You want to be able to still defend your base in case of raids as you're making a push. So in a lot of cases that is the right thing to do, but considering you're the one who's putting constant pressure in this game, and with the knowledge that the Malians, especially with this kind of a spawn, they are forced onto defensive, that's something you have to be really careful about.
Yeah, you just know MSN's kicking himself for that one. And you just hope that he's not getting into the nerves aren't getting to him, or he's not sort of tilting as a result of that unfortunate error. In this case, still didn't tap out as the age up comes in, still looking to get some damage done, but it is all over there. Wam takes game 3 to go up 2-1 over MSN. I think MSN, I mean, it looked like maybe if there was a chance, if he did have everything there together, that he could have broken that position out front for Wam. We will never know. But MSN, there's 2 ways you can bounce back from that. One is it sort of tilts you to the end of the earth, and you're like, I can't believe I'm playing like this. Or you chalk it off as, okay, I made 1 error, no big deal. If I didn't do that, I would have been in the great position. I've already taken 1 game off the guy. I can bring this back in the next few games, not a problem.
Well said. That's kind of the mindset that MSN needs to have in this position. Because at the end of the day, right, even if theoretically the push might have been enough to break through there with all those units, MSN can't be too hard on himself in this position. At the end of the day, he's facing the Malians as the Jushi, and you know, I mean, you're going into this already with just at the back of your mind knowing that this is just such a difficult matchup, and it's just a very tough position to play from, and that loss is kind of expected, just from a theory perspective with how these civs interact. So he shouldn't be too tilted. That's the interesting part. Like he might not be tilted by the loss in and of itself, knowing it's it's expected in this matchup. But the fact that there was a chance there potentially and the mistake of those units, that might then tilt him. So it's always a very, very interesting situation when that does occur, when potentially an unfavorable matchup could have went your way, but a mistake makes it not go that way. That's always pretty sour. So we'll see how much that does affect him, because what a matchup. I mean, we have Cliffside, and it's going to be finally MSN gets to play his Abbasid here, and I'm surprised, honestly, by the choice here to opt for Abbasid as his secondary pick alongside Japan instead of Golden Horde. Um, I'm under the choice. Oh, okay. I I didn't want to stop my train of thought, but I just realized what's happening, and I think this is intentional from MSN, probably expecting Delhi to be picked here by Wam alongside maybe French or some others. Maybe he expected Macedonian as well, but the Canadian brothers do love to play Delhi here, and I know MSN in particular feels very comfortable in this very matchup.
No, I
But
still
yeah,
think I
I
still
know
think
what's
like of
coming.
Emerson's Abbasid as being the clown car days,
Oh yeah.
which was, I think, traumatizing for a lot of the top players, and maybe a bit of an introduction to the scene for many watching MSN, and to see where he's grown to since those days, but still picking the Abbasid as one of his go-to serves is awesome. I think we've seen a lot in the scene, particularly with top players or the top 8 to 12 or so, really leaning in to the meta, and we see a lot of the same bands, a lot of the same picks, and a lot of trying to get the same sort of matchups. That when we see these players which are more on the fringe of those top spots, picking out things that either are a bit more out there with their strategies or a bit more of comfort picks for themselves. We saw that earlier today with Kiljadi's set as well. I loved seeing him do just things that you're not going to expect a Beastie or Marine Lord to be picking out. And we're not going to have to wait too much longer to see what MSN has in store for us. We get into the game. Cliffside, we've got Wab now in red, as the Delhi on the top side of the map. MSN in his very exciting Abbasid in blue on the bottom side of the map. And I'm very excited to get into this game, Myriad, and I'm very excited to seeing no Castle H. Let's get into it.
Cliffside is the map here. Potential game point for Wam, who is leading the series 2-1 at this stage. Cliffside, bit of an unusual map in the sense that the players spawn very close to each other. It's barely more than a screen away on a lot of spawns, and of course, true to the name of the map, there's cliffs dotted all around the map, carving it in two, essentially. And it works out to where one side of the map is very rich in wood and often other resources like food as well, whereas the other one normally contains all of the gold, as we can see the split here. The south of Emerson's base is where most of his small wood lines are, whereas the left is where a lot of the cliffs as well as most of the golds are, and it's the exact same mirrored on Wam's side. So it presents an interesting dynamic where on most maps you are able to very heavily lean to one side of your spawn, either towards the north, towards the south. But this map in particular, the tricky part is that often you are forced to lean fully and play very, very wide, which favors some civilizations over the others and obviously becomes even more relevant the longer the game goes and as those initial gold mines start running out. It will be a while before we get to that point. I mean, that point will only come in once that secondary gold mine does run out, which frankly, I'd be surprised if this game reaches that stage.
We're hoping it doesn't. Yeah. In this case, it is interesting on the food element. Wham's got his berries tucked away nicely. Both players do, which of course being these serves that do not go for the ball, but instead have those berry bonuses is in their favor. Both of Wham's dare packs are to the east of his base, which of course he will eventually get pro scouts in naturally, whether he's looking to favor that for any by any intention or not, which might make things a bit easier for him to bring them in. Or if MSN can take map control, it makes it a bit easier for him to deny. Whereas for Emerson, his food, deer right in front of his base, and the other deer is really far away, tucked all the way on the right. So for him, looking to bring on some aggression, military wing. If it was anything else, I would be signing off right now. But we will see that come out. But securing the food behind this feudal aggression is so important. The sheep count is split. The berries are in nice safe locations. And I think from the Dark Age, we're all set to have a proper clash.
You guessed it. A clash it is going to be indeed. So MSN, with no surprises, going for the military wing like you mentioned, and it's pretty much going to be an immediate stable follow-up right afterwards, I predict, to round out the composition. Not only because that's the right thing to do, but, you know, it being MSN, it's pretty much confirmation that we are going to see horsemen and plenty of them as well. And horsemen, I believe they actually trade cost effectively up against Ghazi Raiders due to that additional range as well as attack speed. Despite having lower base damage, they are also cheaper on top of it as well. Of course, the issue comes in when with the healing from those scholars. So Wam, it's not like he's going to take full pitched fights where he's going to lose some Ghazi Raiders to horsemen. He is going to be very careful with his unit control, especially with his caliber of play. Done with the Faith, no surprises there coming up, about to finish soon here for Wam, and it's most likely going to be a stable follow-up for him as well. We can see the immediate stable as well as the archery range. The archery range surprises me just a little bit, considering the Ghazi open is very likely here from Wam, but he potentially expects Wam to go into an immediate archery range instead in preparation after the stable due to the sheer aggression that's coming his way.
Yeah, MSN just going for everything all at once to start with. We see the military wing units coming across the map at the start, obviously pushing off of berries nice and easy. Wham sees that he already knows straight away. Actually, very cheekily, seeing those units walk past and then skipping on back to the berries to get that value. Very nice from Wham. Now, MSN sending one of the archers around the other side, trying to get the full circle of the base, which is very clever, actually, to make sure you're covering all your bases and forces those two villages off of the gold. Not too much of a problem for Delhi, or not too much of a worry. Of course, that gold in the early feudal age, Wham will be happy to have got what he's got. But now he'll need to look into making his own army and what he's going to make against what is certainly all of this all-out aggression from MSN. What does Myriad, what does a Delhi do in this situation? Is it tri-comp match with the scholars, or is there something else that he's going to look to do, making the most of the Ghazi?
Honestly, I have no idea, because it's not a situation you come across very often, and it's really a question of how do the full stacked armies in feudal fare against each other, right? We have to consider the bonuses at play here. Delhi have the Ghazi Raider, huge bonus damage, as well as, of course, the healing and the free upgrades. But that's it, really, right? It's good, but it's nothing too crazy. Abbasid, on the other hand, well, we have a completely baseline army. Every unit is normal, but the Spearmen do have the Phalanx upgrade, giving them the highest range in the game of any Civ, outside of Iobids, who also have it, of course. But you also get Boot Camp from the military wing, an additional plus 10 or 15%, I think it might be 15% health on all infantry units, which is very massive when it comes to these trades. 15%, there we go. Nice cheap little upgrade, and that's quite significant as these army numbers grow. And on top of it, they have access to the camels that could debuff those Ghazi Raiders. So, although the list is longer for Abbasid, that doesn't necessarily mean it's better. I mean, once all the upgrades are in for the Delhi and they can suddenly pull out 10, maybe 15 scholars as an army unit and as a frontline, as a heal, that's obviously a huge bonus right there in and of itself. So, really, it's going to be something new for all of us here.
I'm very excited. For Wham, at least at this stage, just looking to continue into the Ghazi. Coming across the map, looking to do whatever damage he can, but I'm sure also just looking to scout whatever MSN is up to. And with MSN's army on the other side of the map, he's actually had to pull off his berries onto the sheep under his TC, which is not too many left, it looks like, even with the even sheep count on the map. But he is forcing those Ghazi back, and we see Wham now making plenty of archers to go with this. Certainly respecting the feudal age aggression, and certainly expecting MSN to commit to it, as he has done in every game he's been able to so far. But yeah, I gotta say, as we were looking at those upgrades and you were rattling them off, and we saw boot camp actually is 15%. I always thought it was 10 actually, because 15%, especially in the, in a Lord of Lancaster game, we've seen the strength that they give. We see Ghazi turning around, just trying to get a little bit of damage. As long as they stay out of the way of the spearmen, they're fine to do that, and then forcing MSN back. Very nice from Wam so far. Just posturing more so than fighting at this stage, as both our players look to build up their militaries. Nobody blinking just yet.
Somehow behind this, Wam actually managed to opt for the blacksmith as a second building after the stable before the archery range, which is... It's risky indeed, but he managed to stem the initial pressure, right? There wasn't any significant damage taken here from Wam, so having that range damage upgrade coming in at this very moment, merely a couple seconds out at this stage, is going to be huge when it comes to this first fight. MSN only now going back onto the gold after pulling off and getting his double broadaxe, and a lot of gold he will need, because he needs not only the blacksmith upgrades but also the boot camp, of course, will be very important, and he ideally wants to get those before any fight breaks out. Otherwise the fight just will not be in his favor, really. And he prioritized putting off of gold to get this early timing of getting a lot of units on the field, which is why he's been so ahead for so very long. But if you don't find significant damage with those units, which has not been found, then suddenly you're just dealing with a tempo deficit. And that's exactly what we're witnessing here. Wam not only is starting to get and even match MSN's numbers at this point, but also has an upgrade advantage as the Delhi, which is relatively rare in the feudal age in most cases.
Yeah, and still, as you mentioned, MSN not pulling more onto gold to make up for that. Happy to just let that trickle in and see the upgrades come in slowly over time. But the tempo certainly has subsided a little bit for him. And without the blacksmith upgrades, particularly on the archers, it is going to make a difference, as you see them really struggling to kill even a scholar there. Whereas Wam does already have these steeled arrows, so the 1+ attack on the archers, which make them kill these spearmen in particular so much faster. In fact, it might even get the camel archer, not quite, but is getting to shoot away at the spearmen who are lagging in the back of the formation there, which is getting just these little bits of wins for Wam, which is going to make all the difference as both players commit so much to feudal. The scholar running into his death, say goodbye. And the Ghazi, or the horseman, trying to wrap around for Emerson, not quite able to get onto anything. There's just so many Ghazi. They're always being able to tank for these archers, but now we do see MSN coming in a little bit to do some damage to the archers, which are going to go down even under the healing. And some of those spearmen still alive, but not many left. It's the horsemen in the front that are taking the fight, and we see the archers left clicking, both players microing and clicking on all the units to try not to be shooting at the horsemen. But it is a huge clash now. We've got really, really similar military counts. Now, obviously, some of those are in scholars, but some of those scholars are also in the fight, and we see MSN now pulling out. There's just so many Ghazi left, and there are no spares on the field for MSN as a result of all that.
Right as the upgrade phalanx finishes for MSN, there's not a single spear left on the field for him, and all of these Ghazis, Wam smells blood. He just goes in directly. He doesn't even bother trying to heal these Ghazis. He knows he can finish this hero now, and I think he can. He may be a little bit overzealous with this dive as MSN continues to produce, and a lot of those injured Ghazis go down. It hurts to see, really, but it's worth it because he just breaks through, and now he's looking to dive with impunity. Actually, no, backs off just there, which is a good choice. I think you don't want to overextend too much, but I mean, MSN is just, it's a horrible position to be in. There's no way to sugarcoat this. The timing is gone. The tempo is completely shifted. The center is now getting walled. Sacred sites are up for grabs everywhere, and this is exactly how Delhi begins to snowball out of control very quickly indeed. Even now, MSN only now getting his undermesh way past the point of him actually needing it, and now Wam will be left unchecked to go raid everywhere on the map, get the triple sacred sites, and it's going to be a pretty smooth transition to Castle Age for him behind this.
Yeah, Wam kind of has or every option available to him at this point. And you see even those villagers trying to run away without wheelbarrow. They're just they're just slowly dying, almost like they want it to happen. They're inviting it in, and there's a few spearmen there now, maybe. Only one on the field, that is actually, but the horseman coming to try to fight that spearman, doing everything he possibly can. But the Ghazi have been just whacking away for a while now. 7 kills, it's not quite ended there. 8 villager kills. And already being behind on the economy there for MSN. He's taken damage himself. All the sacred sites have been capped for Wam, which means that he can look to go up to castle basically whenever he chooses. And unfortunately, yeah, I think MSN will probably be kicking himself a little bit that he didn't take that fight at a better time when he wanted to. Phalanx upgrade, blacksmith upgrades could have made all the difference for him. But you know, hindsight's 2020, and I'm sure he was feeling the pressure to try to make something happen against Wam and not let him get to that position of being able to snowball, like you said. But unfortunately, in this case, losing that fight gave him the very thing he was trying to avoid. And at this point, Wam can pretty much run away with the game however he chooses to.
Yeah, exactly right. MSN has his back up against the wall, which is his base, and he's just unable to move out effectively. This is the position you never want to find yourself in, knowing that you're so behind in army that your opponent could push in and deal severe damage anytime he wishes. So you have to keep reinvesting, but at the same time, you're just unable to obtain the information of whether your opponent is even considering that, which in this case, of course, is not the situation. Wam is just transitioning to Castle Age whilst having the army advantage at the same time because of the sheer effectiveness of that earlier fight. And really, it's... I mean, MSN is going to find a nice little raid here, which unfortunately he doesn't... Ooh,
He does.
Back just in time. That's going to be... This is like... you know, a drop in the pond needed to mount the comeback. It's a good start. But I think it looks like Textiles is in as well, so a lot of these villagers are going to escape. And at the same time, though, Wam opens up the way with the horseman gone for him to find his own raid behind this and also pick off even more of MSN's villagers. MSN does pick up 4 for his trouble, but drops another 4 himself, so the damage has just been neutralized at the very same time. Meanwhile, the sites are still ticking, House of Learning is almost finished, and the game is just looking dire.
It's match point. MSN standing or hanging in there. I mean, we see the difference between Textiles plus Wheelbarrow compared having neither of them. As unfortunately MSN's villages do fall over, but he is keeping some horsemen on that side of the map, and he is able to keep trying to sprawl out, take resources, deny raid where he can, keep his units there. But the Castle Age comes in. MSN knows it's all over, and unfortunately it's all over for his journey to qualify for the Homestead Cup as well. And it is Wam who takes the set 3-1 and moves on to tomorrow to compete for one of those final 2 spots in Serbia.
Great series between these two, and fantastic play, of course, from Wam, as we'd expect from him by now. Just such a consistent, solid player. But MSN should be pretty proud of himself for taking a win as well. It's not easy at this level. These players with the sheer amount of experience and practice and ability that they have, picking up one game is a big win here for sure. So he should be pretty proud of himself for that. And there's plenty of material for him to look back to here and analyze as to what could be done better for next time. Have a look at this bracket.
Fantastic news actually coming in there, Myriad. I was completely wrong. At this stage, we do enter the losers bracket, so MSN can learn. He can watch back those games and learn that he's coming back tomorrow. He's got plenty of chance to come up against whether it's Demu or Puppy Paw, and still have a chance to qualify. That's great news for MSN. It's great news for me. I'm still excited to come back and watch that tomorrow.